Today, our topic is Greece. Did you know that there are only 7 seas in the world, and Greece is surrounded by 3 of them? Can you guess which ones? Greece is a peninsula bordered by the Ionian Sea, the Mediterranean Sea, and Aegean Sea. In English-speaking countries, we call this country Greece, but the Greeks' name for their own country is Hellas, which gets its name from the Hellas Republic. Greece comes from the Latin term Graecia, as used by the Romans, which means land of the Greeks. The city-states of ancient Greece were far more sophisticated than that of ancient Egypt, which we talked about last time. Did you know that we received and still use many things that the Greeks founded? Did you ever study mythology, like Homer and the Odyssey in high school? These things came from the Greeks. Other things to come from them are parts of our alphabet, many studies like astronomy, geometry, chemistry, biology, physics, mathematics, and arithmetic. The Greeks also gave us democracy, architecture, philosophy, myths, plays, sculpture, pottery, art, science, and medicine. Famous philosophers you may have heard of from this time are Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. Also, if you don't know, the Olympics were born in Greece, at Mount Olympus. Today, the people of Greece are still very active and are very into athletics. So looking at the history of Greece, the Bronze Age was from 3000 BC to 1100 BC and had several cultures termed Helladic, or also called the Mycenaean, and Minoan and Cycladic. After the Bronze Age, there were the Dark Ages for about 300 years, and then there was a great advancement and development in the country. Greece's height was reached between 500 to 330 BC in an era termed Classical, Hellenic, or the Golden Age. Major contributors to the development of the Greek arts were the Dorians, Ionians, and Aeolians, who all migrated to Greece during the Bronze Age or the Dark Ages. Have you ever heard of Alexander the Great? He's also known as Alexander of Macedon, or the son of King Philip. He reigned and conquered many territories in and around Europe and Asia, and as a result, the Greek architecture of the Hellenistic period was in great demand, and the influence was spreading eastward. By the age of 30, he was the creator of one of the largest empires in ancient history, and he was undefeated in battle and is considered one of the most successful commanders of all time. The Dorians and Ionians had political clashes, and in the 5th century BC, the Peloponnesian War began between them. This reshaped ancient Greece, minimizing the city of Athens and increasing the size of Sparta. The Peloponnesian War was very costly, and so ended the Golden Age of Greece. Geographically, Greece is a mountainous country surrounded by 3 seas. Because of this isolation, the Greeks became very independent and learned how to thrive alone. Areas inside of Greece that became settled were independent city-states and would impose different types of government. Oligarchical government is where the power is with the elite. Tyrannical government is where there is one person in charge and the ruling is based on violence. And then there was democratic government where all the people have an equal say. Ancient Greek architecture and art searches for the ideal or the perfect proportion and distribution of parts. A Greek mathematician diagrammed the golden mean which is a geometric relationship between rectangles and squares based on a system of proportioning. This is also seen in nature in all natural things like in seashells and flowers. The classical qualities include clarity, symmetry, repose or angle, and simplicity. So the term classical refers to the elements like columns, pediments, and attributes of the Greeks, and will often be referred to in later chapters. The climate in Greece was great for outdoor activities, and the men were devoted to outdoor public ceremonies. Men did not customarily have jobs, although they might have business dealings, but they mainly stayed outside all day. Inside the dining room was very male-oriented, with decorative enhancement emphasized. Rituals and debates were very important, but mainly took place outside the home. Workrooms and offices were often provided in many households, and the influence of the climate on their home design is seen with courtyards. Generally, there was a central courtyard with rooms around to take advantage of the southern sun. Porticos and colonnades were also common features. Classic Greek and Roman architecture influenced structurally and decoratively future periods beginning with the Italian Renaissance. There have been exact replicas and interpretations of Greek architecture used. Many continue to be inspired today. Here you can see several examples of modern architecture where Greek influence plays a major role in their design. Columns were significant in defining Greek spaces. They divided the space horizontally and also created visual interest and would draw your eye up to the ceiling because of the decorative capital or top of the column. Can you name the types of columns, the types of Greek columns? If you guessed Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian, you'd be correct. Of the three columns found in Greece, the Doric column are the simplest. They have a capital, or the top or crown, made of a circle topped by a square. The shaft, or the tall part of the column, is plain and has 20 sides. There is no base in the Doric order. The Doric order is very plain but powerful looking in its design. Doric, like most Greek styles, works well horizontally on buildings. That's why it's so good with long rectangular buildings made by the Greeks. The area above the column, called the frieze, has simple patterns. Above the columns are the metopes and triglyphs. The metope is a plain, smooth stone section between triglyphs. Sometimes the metopes had statues of heroes or gods on them. The triglyphs are a pattern of 3 vertical lines between the metopes. There are many examples of ancient Doric buildings. Perhaps the most famous one is the Parthenon in Athens. And it's probably the most studied building on Earth. Even structures built now borrow some parts of the Doric order. The Ionic style is a little more decorative than the Doric. The Ionic shafts were taller than Doric ones, and this makes the column look slender. They also had flutes, which are lines carved into them from top to bottom. The Greeks were really into proportions and correcting optical illusions. They would change the size or proportion to make it look correct from far away. They did this with their columns. The shafts had a special characteristic called entisis,
where the shaft would be bulging in the center.
And they did this to make the column look straight. Since you would see the building from eye level, the shafts would appear to get narrower as they rise. So this bulge helps make up for that. So it makes it look straight when it really isn't. The frieze is plain, the bases were large and looked like a set of stacked rings. and Ionic capitals consisted of a scroll above the shaft. The Corinthian order is the most decorative and is usually the one most modern people know best. Corinthian also uses entices to help make the shaft look straight. The Corinthian capitals have flowers and leaves below a small scroll. The shaft has flutes and the base is like the Ionian. Unlike the Doric and Ionian cornices, there is a slant and the Corinthian roof are flat. Here you can see a closer view of the capitals of each order. During the Bronze Age, the Megaron floor plan was created. It was divided into 3 parts, similar to the Egyptians: the hall, the storeroom at the back, and the porch. These were often around or would enclose an open courtyard. Do you know why the Greeks preferred this plan? They preferred this plan because they liked the inward orientation and the privacy it created. Looking at their interior materials, most information about the Greeks come from excavations, tombs, and paintings or reliefs. Materials thought to be used by the Greeks include marble, limestone, wood, and clay. Walls for private houses were still constructed with sun-dried mud brick, which were usually very thick. Interior floor treatments ranged depending on the wealth. Earthen floors were used by all economic levels, but wealthier Greeks might also have incorporated plaster, painting, or mosaic flooring. Upper floors were made out of earth, mud, or wood. Decorative techniques had 3 categories of technique of mosaic. First would be the pebble mosaic, set in mortar, primarily only black and white. Second will be the tessellated mosaic, which is squarish pieces of tessera of stone or glass set into a mortar and ground flat. And third, or the least common, was the opus sectile, where individual pieces were cut to fit predetermined abstract designs. Mosaics were used only in the important rooms. Walls were divided into 3 zones, the same as the Egyptians: the dado, main field, and cornice. More elaborate paintings started to be done during this time. They would paint to imitate marble. Architectural features were created through painting. Plaster was applied in the main field to create entablatures, and pictorial paintings were created in the main field. Lamps were used in rooms as well, and small niches were created in the floor for holding the lamps. Clerestory windows were used by the Greeks, and they used various shapes and sizes. Doors were made out of wood and stone, and marble was used for very prominent doorways. Greeks even used pivoting doors, and the doors were hung on rods that allowed them to pivot open and close. Ceilings were either flat and painted, or they could be coffered with recessed panels. Ceilings in the dining areas were the most decorative, since Greeks would recline to eat. Little time was spent in the home and indoors, so there was not much furniture created. Wood was the main material used for furniture building, and they might incorporate other materials like copper, bronze, iron, or marble. Leather thongs or cords were incorporated into their seating. Decorative detail would be done with painting, carving, or inlay of woods, gold, ivory, or gems. Round legs on furniture were common after the lathe was discovered by the Greeks. They had mainly 3 different seating types: the throne, which was used by the deities and prominent people. If they were made of marble, they were for outdoor use, like in their theaters. The second type of seating was the klizmos chair, which you can see here. It was widely used in households and perfected by Greek craftsmen, with legs that were curved outward and had a woven leather seat. And the stool was used by all, and there were several types of stools in existence, some with turned or round legs, some with rectangular legs. Some had an X-shaped stool with legs and hoofs of a deer or animals. The tables that were created were often small, light, and could be carried around. They were used primarily for meals, and each person had their own little table, similar to the ones that we have today in our living rooms. They were often of three shapes, either rectangular, trapezoid, or round shaped. Storage pieces were mainly used to store clothing, jewelry, and household items, and they had hinged lids. And the couch or recline was used as a sofa, a bed, and for reclining at meals. Decline is the root word for the English word recline and allows the user to lay back while resting on the outer curving arm. And here in this lower picture you can see the example of decline. The Greeks used many different variations in ornamentation. Lots of patterns like zigzags, concentric circles, like we see here for the Olympics, lotus, spirals, leaf patterns, and wave patterns. This concludes our presentation on the Greeks. Next time, we'll be talking about the Romans.